today we're going to look at how to convert from fractions to decimals, percents, and then percents to decimals to fractions. So going in both directions depending on what the question's asking. It's actually really straightforward. So let's say that we start off with a fraction and we want to take it to a decimal or to a percent. All you're going to do is follow the arrow. So if you start with a fraction, we're going to go down to a decimal, so we're going to divide. First come, first serve. What goes in the house? 17. Outside the house, 20. First you divide, then add a 0 because I need it. First you divide, then multiply, then subtract. Hey! Bring it down. It's nothing bring down, so we're going to add a 0, so that's going to be 0. Then sing again. First you divide 5 times, then multiply 100, then subtract. Hey! Alright, so it's 0, so that's all it is. So the decimal is 0.85. So that's the decimal. So we've gone from fraction to a decimal. So if the question was to get it to a decimal, we'd be done. And say it's to get to a percent. All we have to do is move 2 decimal places to the right and 0 fill if you need. Alright, so write the decimal down and then take it and move it to the right 2 times. 1, 2. So now it goes at the end of 5, so it's 85%. Or you can write 85.0 if you want. And that's it. That's all there is. So now we're going to go backwards. So let's say you're given a percent and you need to get it to a decimal or to a fraction. So start with the 85% we just did. You're going to move the decimal 2 places to the left and 0 fill if needed. Ignore any zeros at the end. So we'll start with 85. So the decimals at the end, we're going to move it to the left twice. So it's going to be 0.85. Now it's a decimal. Okay, there's no zeros at the end, so that's fine. So now move it up back to a fraction. You're going to put the number as a numerator without the decimal. So 85 without the decimal over 1. And then add as many zeros as you can to step 2. Step 2, count how many times it take you to get from the decimal to the end of the number. So 1, 2. Take it 2. 2 times equals 2 zeros. So however many you count is the number of zeros you put in. So 2 times equals 2 zeros. So now I'm going to put 2 zeros next to my 1. And then the last step is just to simplify. Okay, so what goes in 85 and 100? 5. And if you don't know this off heart, I'll just show you the work. Yes, you do have to write it down. First you divide, then multiply, then subtract. Hey, bring it down. Alright, so it's just a song over and over again. So 17 times, and then 5 into 100. First you divide 2, then multiply 10, then subtract. Hey, and that there's a 0 right there, so 20. Alright, so you see how we get the fraction back, 17 over 20. So this is all we're doing, converting from a fraction to a decimal to a percent, and then backwards, just depending on whatever the question is asking. So we're going to take a look at some examples. This is going to be your first listening check. Don't write 6 there, write number 1. Don't write 6 there, write number 1. That's your listening check. Alright, so you're supposed to write 0.86 as a percent. So that's a decimal. So you're going from a decimal to a percent. All you have to do is move the decimal 2 places to the right. So write down it 1, 2. So it's 16%. That's it. Alright, this is going to be your second listening check. Instead of writing 7 there, write number 2. Instead of writing 7, write number 2. Listening check, instead of writing 7, write number 2. 60% as a fraction. So we're a percent, and then we're going up to a fraction. So we're going to be following the up arrows. So I'm going to write down 60 and then move the decimal 2 places to the left. 1, 2. It does say ignore the zeros at the end. So we're going to ignore the zeros at the end, so it's 0.6. So that's my decimal. Once you have my decimal, we need to go up to a fraction. Put the number as a numerator without the decimal, so that's going to be 6 over 1 and as many zeros as it takes you to count to the end. So 1. 1 time equals 1 0. So we're just going to add 1 0 there. And then the final step is to simplify. So what goes in 6 and 10? 2. How many times it goes in 6? 3. And into 10? 5. So my final fraction is 3 over 5. So just depending on what they're asking is what you're doing. We're going to look at some more examples. Let's do another listening check. From now on, that's number 3, not number 1, number 3. And then from now on, just keep going 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So just ignore the numbers I'm writing and just keep going in order. So right now, that's a decimal. So we're starting off with percent, and then you're going to decimal. So percent to a decimal. So we're going to up. We just move the decimal 2 places to the left. Ignore the zeros at the end. Alright, so write it down 164.4. Move it twice. There you go, 1.644. And you're done. Ignore any zeros at the end. No zeros at the end. That's fine. Alright, so number 4.
He won't stop chasing us. That's just his
starting with a fraction and going to percent. So fraction to percent, so going down. So the first thing we do is divide. First come, first serve. 2 in the house, 5 outside. First you divide, how many times? 0. Add a 0 and a decimal. First you divide, 4 multiply, 20. Then subtract, hey, nothing, 0. So 0.4. Once you've divided, you're now at a decimal and you need to make it to a percent. So all you have to do is move that decimal 2 places to the right and 0 fill if you need. So 1, 2. Now this one I do need to put a 0 because you see how there's a space there. So I was going to put a 0 right there. So your answer is 40%. Done.
There are no words, no phrase I could create.
This time you're going to start with a percent and you're going to a fraction. So percent to a fraction, so we're going up. So move the decimal 2 places to the left and 0 fill, ignore any zeros at the end. So write it down, 170, move it 2 places, so 1, 2, so it's 1.70, but ignore the 0 at the end, so 1.7. So now it's your decimal because you're ignoring the zeros at the end. So now you're going to a fraction, put the number only without the decimal, so it's going to be 17 over a 1, and add as many zeros as it takes you to get to the end of the number in from that decimal. So it's going to be 1. So 1 time equals 1 0. So as many times as you count to the end equals the amount of zeros. So you're just going to put it 17 over 0. Final step is to simplify. Does anything go 17 and 10? No. So you're done. This time you're going from a fraction to a percent. So from a fraction down to a percent. So the first thing you do is divide. So first come, first serve. What goes in the house? 21. Outside the house, 25. First you divide, 0, add a 0. First you divide, 25 is 208. 8 times 25, multiply. Then subtract, hey, bring it down. Nothing bring down, so you can add a 0 and bring that down. First you divide, 4. 25, yeah, 4. Then multiply 100, then subtract, hey, there's nothing written down, so there you're done. So 0.84 is your decimal. But remember, we want to go to a percent. So we had a decimal to percent, you just move the decimal 2 places to the right. So we're going to go 2 to the right, 1, 2. So 84% because you don't need to 0 fill on that one. Alright, let's look at one last example. Alright, so we're going from a fraction to a percent. So from a fraction to a percent. So we're going all the way down again. So first step is you divide. First come, first serve. What gets in the house? 10 outside 4. First you divide 2, then multiply, then subtract. Hey, bring it down. Nothing bring down, so add a decimal, put a 0, bring that down. First you divide 5, then multiply 20, then subtract. Hey, 0, bring it down. So there's nothing to do, you're done. So 2.5 is my decimal, but remember we're going to percent, so you just have to move the decimal 2 places to the right. So 2.5, and then you move in the decimal point 2 places, 1, 2. 0 fill if needed. So this one I need to put a 0 because it can't be a space. So that's what? 250%. Final listening check. I want you to color code. Everything where you see a fraction, choose one color and color it that color. So mine are all green. An actual fraction or the word fraction, the same color green. Same thing with the decimal. So everywhere you see a decimal or the word decimal, color it a different color. Same thing with percent. Anywhere you see the word percent or an actual percent, color it the same color.